Hello, everyone. Welcome back to DHTV. I am Chris Phillips from DNH. Joining us today for this Collegiate Esports panel, I've got Josh Kell. As again, back to my tradition of messing up names as I introduce people. Josh is the CEO of Esports Integrations, and Jason Frigidy is laughing at me from the Solutions Lab at DNH in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. How you guys doing?
Doing well. How are you?
It wouldn't be me kicking off a broadcast if I didn't immediately botch the first name that I said. Even if I write the name down in front of me, still gonna botch it.
That's fine.
If you have any questions throughout this broadcast, other than that one, we do have a Q&A panel in the bottom left-hand corner, wherever it is on your screen. We'll be answering questions throughout the broadcast. So feel free if you have anything that comes up you want to ask. For myself, for Jason, or for Josh, we're here to answer it. But I want to start off by just kind of acknowledging that in the past we've talked about esports here at DNH, but we've always kind of talked about it at the K-12 level, and that's why I'm so excited to have Josh here today, because he can really explain esports at the collegiate level. And I want to kick things off over to you, Josh, and just kind of tell people who might only be familiar of quoting opportunities or esports at the K-12 level. How does esports at the collegiate level different from esports at the K-12 level?
Sure. So the way that we look at esports at K-12, because actually we deal in both markets, right? So esports at K-12 is foundational. It's fundamental. You're being introduced to the industry. You're being introduced to those elements, competition, and really everything around the beginnings and the understanding at an esports level. At the higher education level, we are looking more at opportunities for career.
This is just Josh that we lost there.
I think he just froze up a little bit there.
Well, we will give Josh a second to come back here. In the meantime, as Josh was talking about, where the business for esports does kind of is similar at the K-12 level in terms of actual hardware, the actual how you grow an esports program in the collegiate level is a little bit different. So hopefully we get Josh back up online to talk about that. In the meanwhile, we can kind of do a brief little dive into the hardware, because for a lot of cases, the hardware is the same, but we do see a lot more of a venue building rather than straight up just components, monitors, keyboards, mice, and they're just really kind of trying to get computers for athletes at the K-12 level. At the collegiate level, we do a little bit more venue building, and that entails a little bit more pro AV. Isn't that correct, Jason?
Yeah, there's a lot more involved when you get to a higher education level. So a lot of the designs around K through 12 are sort of a repositioning of a space, is most common in what I've done in the past. Usually it's around library and other open spaces such as tech labs or computer labs at schools in K through 12. When it comes to universities and colleges, the budget and the direction's a lot different. So they have a different mannerism of pretty much approaching the solution. So this way they're almost repositioning almost like arena leftovers or something like that. So let's say a school builds a new facility for their normal athletics program, and they want to reuse an existing space into it. So older arenas have been pretty much one of the go-tos for colleges and universities that are growing in the esports community. And so that entails putting in all the display products, cameras to manage it, the switching of all the solutions. So multiplexing all the signals together, video walls for sharing, and then if they have in-room audiencing and managing. And this is just one of the parts that goes with everything else that we have. That's just the components, computer sides of it. So there's definitely a lot of different elements involved in it.
Yeah, because, well, the main thing and what we've seen, we've done a lot of work with the Harrisburg University, their sports program. At the collegiate level, you're not only just setting up hardware for the athletes to participate in the competition, you're also setting up hardware for viewers to be able to view the competition, whether it be live. Before the pandemic, we had a lot more of that, and we'll get into that after once we're through this. But also, to your point, setting up a streaming environment similar to the one I'm using right now, where you have people that are actually broadcasting those games directly to the people that would want to view those competitions. So it's a little bit more of a different hardware. It adds a little bit more hardware to the actual overall equation. So having the ability to bring in hardware partners like Lenovo for systems and monitors and even accessories. They have the keyboard, mice, and all that stuff. If you're going component builds, you can build Intel-based systems, Samsung SSDs. We've got partnerships with all of those vendors, so we will at least be able to help you out on the hardware side of things and be able to build out most of that solution for you. I think we stop at staging. That's about where you're not going to be able to buy a stage from us, but we can get you all the technical hardware. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. So there's the facilities is the other large part of it. So that is definitely a contract. Like a contractor, you're going to get a general contractor to help manage all the different elements, especially on a collegial side. K through 12 is a little different, where they could go through existing like furniture providers, and that's pretty much to build out the space. And then not just in collegial, they don't have just the arena space, but they also have the training environments as well, like we saw at Harrisburg University. So they do have their own mock-up designs, so they can have individual and small team groups, and then review sessions where they can actually play back content that they've recorded during those sessions as well. Just like no different than any other athletic organization and how it manages how it does its solution. But a lot of this is more tech oriented. So for us now, we're putting into those, the route switching and into matrix and managed control and automation switching. So it's a little different rather than having a lot of those physical athletic products that you'd have. Now we have a lot of the tech products to make that a reality. So it definitely helps out.
Are we back?
Josh, welcome back.
I'm sorry about that. I have no idea.
Don't be sorry. I blame Bubba, and Bubba knows what he did.
Thanks, Bubba. He's the best guy in the world. I'll tell you that right now.
He knows what he did. Anyway,
anyway,
I don't even know where we were at, but
I don't know where everything decided to take a bath.
That's all right. Let's just start off at the top.
Let's do that.
Me and Jason we were speaking a little bit while you were gone about how the hardware changes compared from K-12 to the collegiate level. I want to talk about more to start how to build a collegiate esports program and how to get a university excited about actually participating in collegiate esports.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I was stating, the difference obviously is sort of a, there is industry, there's career opportunity, right? And so when starting an esports program, we take a look at several elements for the students, right? The first thing that we look at is authentic adoption, right? Understanding the industry. That's extremely important, extremely important. And so we carefully go through with our clients this whole process of understanding the industry, bringing students online, looking at enrollment, looking at recruitment, looking at the career path, looking at the competitions, and all of those, right? It's an ecosystem. And so that for us is really the starting point to get into really talking to these to these colleges and universities. The authentic adoption is extremely important because these students that are coming to look at these universities will know if it is an authentic esports program. Right. And when we talk to colleges and universities, they know that they're consumers at the end of the day, right? These students are consumers. They have a choice. They have a choice to pick the college based on academic studies, but also what's the culture, what's the community. And when students are applying, they know a lot about esports, and sticking 16 computers in a room is not truly esports, right? That is not the true authentic adoption, and they know the difference. So when they come in and they look at the career opportunities on that, that is really how we start that process and begin that process.
Awesome. So when that process gets started, who are the stakeholders at a university? Who are the people that are going to be the people that can affect change and bring an esports program to reality?
Yeah, so it really depends on who's spearheading this at the end of the day, right? We see a lot from IT. We do see a lot from student life, student government, obviously athletics. And that's sort of a mixed feeling, understanding as athletics, because there's still, we still are faced with it, the challenge of the stigma of esports not being a traditional sport, right? And so normally we define that for them and understand it. But those are typically the locations where we see it starting: student life, IT, or athletics.
Okay. Yeah, and that is one of the key stigmas that are still out there, that when in reality these esports athletes are actually not just sitting at their computers. They go and they train in the weight room from time to time. They are making sure they're staying in good physical shape, because quite frankly, sitting at a computer for a long period of time can take a physical toll if you're not keeping yourself. So that's one of the stigmas to get over. I want to talk then briefly about what's the history of esports at the collegiate level, and where are we going, where we've been, and where are we going over the next 5-10 years?
In the States, it's definitely different, right? We're a little late than the rest of the world, right? You look at Asian markets, they're definitely farther along than we are. But where we are today, you really start seeing from a collegiate standpoint, I think probably one of the mainstream largest competitions that I can think of started, I think, with really Heroes of the Dorm series, which is based on the Blizzard game Heroes of the Storm. Yeah, so like that was truly 400 colleges and universities competing, going through the whole tournament style, and then someone victorious at the end, someone who's winning.
And
now
that was broadcast on ESPN and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, you had full true adoption of that competition, right? And now you're seeing more and more of that through obviously streaming media like Twitch and YouTube and Facebook gaming, and you're seeing more and more schools starting to adopt more content and watching their competitions, right? One of our clients, University of Delaware, I'm constantly watching their Twitter feed. I'm constantly seeing them compete, and that's really the future, right? We're seeing all of these into a level of understanding of content and what those next levels look like for competition.
Nice. And with that in mind, so you spoke a little bit about their social media, and at the collegiate level, this permeates more than just at the athlete level, at the actual people that are competing. This affects a wide variety of people. You talked about careers in esports. Can touch a little bit more on that? What kind of careers are actually available in esports, and what draws these students to these programs?
Yeah, sure. So when we take a look at this, is all part of our platform, right? We take the time to go through not only looking at the competition side, but we look at the industry, right? I will say that till my last dying breath, that esports is an industry that no different than basketball and football, right? Football, basketball, that's an industry. And so the first thing we see and associate with are the players and the competition. But when you look at the football industry, and when you look at the basketball or any major sport industry, you have everything around media rights and marketing and sports management and legal, right? All of that exists. All of that content exists. And really, it's no different for esports. In fact, the online community of esports is massive. It's huge, right? So a lot of these students coming through, they're watching, YouTube influencers that can be playing video games, and then they can do other things as well, right? And so when you're looking at esports and what the industry can offer, right, for these students in a career path, what we say is esports is a vessel, right? It's merely the vessel to take you through a career path. So what you learn through that process is content creation, broadcast, you can learn marketing, you can learn all of these elements. I mean, there's a lot of people have done a lot of different charts on these different business opportunities and career paths that exist out there for specifically esports. But the great thing about it as well, and what a lot of people have to understand, is that these jobs are actually transferable. These skills are transferable. It doesn't have to be, at the end of the day, esports, and that's why we say esports is a vessel, and it is giving a student an opportunity to learn a craft. They may go on into the esports realm and maybe, for a professional team or something like that, be a content creator, but they can use those skills in the news and the broadcast world as well, right? So that's how we view, sort of what are the other options out there. There are, there are tens and hundreds of different opportunities of different titles, different jobs, different tasks, different skills that are necessary in the esports realm.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of a real world scenario, very similar. You touched on it, and I totally agree with you. The same opportunities around a basketball program and a football program exist around an esports program because they have all the same similar things. I worked for a hockey team for 5 years before I came to DNH doing broadcast. Those skills directly moved to this right here and talking to our DNH's customers and resellers and being really excited about technology and wanting to share the latest and greatest with them. So like you said, they can get involved with an esports program, learn skills that are easily transferable to other areas. So
the thing is,
with
it's
that in
captivating
mind, go ahead. Yes,
it's captivating them, right? It's bringing them in. I have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, right? And so what is that generation? Because that's really what we're planning for, even at the collegiate level now. When I'm talking to colleges, I'm thinking of my, well, somewhat selfishly, my 8-year-old and my 11-year-old, because what I see them gravitating towards as far as content, media, the way that they interact, their skill sets, that development, right? And this is something from the high school side and the K-12 side. We've developed curriculum wrapped around that whole concept. And we even work with curriculum from a collegiate standpoint and help them build curriculum wrapped around this industry. But I see this spark in these individuals, and it's such a wide range. It's that it's just from the jock athlete to and I'll say it, nerd. They're getting together. It doesn't matter, right? And esports is what's carrying them through. And you see this common denominator that is then allowing them to learn those skills, and it's captivating them. And that's really the whole purpose when we look at developing a program from the curricular side and the opportunities for the student.
Yeah, and with that in mind, I know you have some examples of some of the work that you've seen at the collegiate level. I'd love if you go ahead and share some of that with us, so the people that are watching with us can get a better sense of what we're seeing at the collegiate level.
Sure. So this is actually the University of Delaware esports team room and space. This was built, just before COVID really sort of entered into the space. But, the space is really designed around several elements, right? It is promoting the social element of esports and gaming on campus. That is one. And then it has a team competition space as well, has a broadcast space that we're utilizing in conjunction with their communications department. So when we look at the space and the opportunity, of what we've done in the space. It's really exciting to see all of this sort of come together. And let me give you a sort of, this is kind of the overview of the different spaces. So you see the broadcast, you see, we actually created, that's one thing that's great about our team. I have a very talented team. Everyone from sales to operations to my installers, the creative side, we were able to create a Super Smash area that was actually based upon Mario. And those are real pipes that we've created. We integrated all the technology into it. But one of the challenges, and this is some of the things that we have to think through, one of the challenges in this room was that wall that's glass behind those Super Smash pipes and behind the Mario pipes, that was a solid wall. It had the air conditioning return duct. And so instead of trying to figure out how to add a whole new air conditioner, I'm like, well, what happens if we build something to accommodate for your return? And they're like, what are you going to do? And I said, give me a day or two, I'll come back. And we worked with the architect and kind of fleshed things out. And we created this whole element that looks like Mario for their Smash. And those two pipes there are actually the return ducts for the air conditioning.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
So it's creative things like that I mean, just the team that I have is just amazing. Everyone at Horizon and Esports Integration, you know, what they put their hands to. But you have a team strategy area as well, you know, a consideration of that, because that's extremely important for the competition side of things. And then you see at the top is the competition space itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And these areas like this kind of act as the hub, the kind of the hook that will, when a student is looking at that particular college, you know, that's where you bring them to let them know, hey, we're serious about esports.
Yeah, we very strategically place this. It's at the end of the student tour when you're coming to visit on campus. So it is the last thing you see. So the crazy thing is, the week we were getting ready to open up, we finally took down all of the drywall, so you couldn't see. Like you had images and renderings when you walked by, but you had no idea. And once we took those walls down, every tour that was coming by, I mean, the kids were like flocking in at that point. I mean, at one point I just had to talk to my guys. I'm like, guys, you can't answer questions. We got to get this done. We've got a grand opening in a day or two. But you saw the interest, and on top of it, you also saw the parents starting to ask questions and become more engaged in it. And that was really important for the university to see as well. You know, they're seeing, once again, that authentic adoption, and that it's more than just playing the video games itself. You know, we see quite a bit of people trying to get into that space, and understanding it is extremely important, that authentic adoption.
Right. And well, Ronnie had a question. I want to get to that, but I also want to touch on that authentic adoption part, because that's a great point. What happens, let's talk about the converse side, where a college program just kind of sets up, like, kind of just takes the approach where we're just going to throw some hardware at the wall and see what happens. What happens there when the students kind of see that approach, and
Sure.
What kind of feedback have you seen from that kind of approach from the student body, and how does those programs usually end up?
Sure. So, you know, if someone's trying to adopt something real fast and they just want to bring it on the name for esports, and they throw a bunch of those computers in a room, that's actually technically not esports. That's actually gaming. You know, esports is the competitive side. And if you have a team, a league, you're involved in those elements, now you're in the esports side of things, right? You're training, you have a coach or someone that's helping out in those spaces, right? That is esports, right? So esports and gaming, sort of the difference between the two. And when we see the gaming element, we see students just not be as engaging and as interested in it. I mean, maybe at a club level, you're going to see that. And we see clubs turn into eventually at the competition side. But it's just sort of it's a very basic approach. And, you know, once again, those students know right away. They see what's happening. And they look at it and go, okay, you've got some it's no different than a lab. It looks like a computer lab. Where is your content? Are you streaming? They'll start asking those questions. What games are you playing in? What leagues are you playing? Because they already know all those leagues. They know Tesla, and they know all those other elements. What games are you playing? And that's the other thing that we have to walk these colleges through is, well, what games are you playing? Do you understand that? When you have an enrollment opportunity, how's your enrollment team prepared to receive these students and these questions and field these questions? And that's all part of our process, is to actually equip them, and we walk them through every element of that. Being a gamer myself and understanding the tournament side and competing in tournaments. It wasn't called esports back then, but it gives a lot of understanding to the functionality of the way that industry works, and just sticking 16 or however many things in a room and putting some consoles in there. Sure, you're going to attract individuals because they're going to have a place to play, and that's sort of the social element of it. But if you're truly investing in esports, understand it is the competitive side of gaming. Right. And coming into that, don't use esports as a term like, I'm going to give you an esports room and it's gaming, right? So you have to sort of understand the terms between each one.
And that was the point I was hoping to get across here, because we get a lot of those requests here at the hardware level, where a college will go, hey, we need 20 gaming systems for our esports setup. And when you ask past that, okay, what's your esports program look like? They go, well, we haven't really figured that out yet. To me, it feels like putting the cart before the horse.
Absolutely.
And to your point, when you do something like that, you'll get interest from the people that are already interested in esports. But to build a really successful one, from what I've seen, you need to have you need to put esports kind of as a larger culture to attract people that may not be interested in gaming at the competitive level. Maybe they play a little bit on the side, but if you have a true esports program, you can still grab those people and get them interested and invested in your program. Maybe not at the competition level, but at the social media level, or at the broadcast level, or at the hardware and infrastructure level.
So years ago, when we first kind of started this whole thing, before you, Dell, and some of the others, like, we work with over 100 colleges, universities across the U.S. right now, right? Doing everything that you see. Everything from planning, roadmap development, planning, design, what do the next 3 to 5 years look like? What does the curriculum look like? What does the facility look like? What hardware recommendations? In fact, actually, the hardware is last. And I know I'm on a webinar with D&H, about that element.
Go ahead.
The understanding, though, needs to start before that. You said cart before the horse, right? Putting the equipment ahead. What games are you playing? How do you know that's even the right spec at the end of the day? Like what are you going to play with? Like, what games are you going to be involved in? So several years ago, we started with and this is going to be Bubba. It's going to be happy about this. So we
don't want to give Bubba any more airtime. He's already kicked you off the air once.
Oh man,
go ahead.
Ottawa University was a great example of the adoption of more than just video games and playing games, right? That was their coach that they had hired. Well, we were already in the process of building the arena and the space, and they hired a coach, Connor. And Connor brought an element where we started talking through, well, what is your social media plan? How are you doing? And he just took off with it. And he's amazing at that. And that really needs to be the understanding and the adoption that it is, right? That we set up a big broadcast station for them. It became a multi-purpose room. It was an older theater that was just kind of like run down on campus. So it not only facilitated all the esports competition side of things, it also is utilized for some of their theaters, some of their other events. And we made it a multi-purpose space, right? So we're AV integrators first, and we have been for over 40 years. Well, just about 40 years now. And so we still brought all those elements to the table. So at the end of the day, the students had an amazing space to compete, and they were really good at competing. I mean, that team, they did very well, in Overwatch and some of the other games that they play. But that adoption is extremely important, and that's where you start to see the success of the programs, right? Something like 4.5% increase in enrollment due to their esports program at Ottawa University. That's big for universities.
Awesome.
That's huge. Have an increase in a swing due to the fact that you have an esports program. And that's the message that we need to get across, that when you have a successful, true esports program, not only the competition side, but also opportunities for career paths and developing those skills for these students, you are going to see an increase because it's captivating them, right? You said culture. It is their culture. It's their community.
So as you did note, we are on a DH broadcast, DHTV, and a lot of our people are asking about the hardware, because that is still a component. That's what our people are here. They're here to understand what esports is and kind of sell that hardware. So I'm gonna back up because Rodney had a question, and I don't you can't get too specific, but what kind of desktops hardware did Delaware University go with? Are they talking about, did they bring in pre-made systems from someone? Did they custom build systems? What did they go with?
So the way that they typically look at it, the way that we look at it is, if you have a general area for the social interaction and the day-to-day use, that's a pre-built machine. Pre-built specs like an RTX 2060 at the very minimum. That'll kind of get you through most of the games which you're going to need from that perspective. But then when we get to the competition side of things, then we actually sat down with them and said, okay, what games are you playing? League of Legends you can run on a toaster. You don't need a whole lot for League of Legends. But if you're into Overwatch and some of the other games, high motion, high speed games, you're going to need a little bit more horsepower behind that. So we upgraded the graphics cards. That's the one thing you want to focus on. Obviously, RAM. Those machines from a competition side, I think were 16 gigs DDR4 at the time. Hard drive space is important. Obviously, we put in M.2 drives. Well, actually, we had 2 drives in the competition side of things. We had all the games and everything running off of M.2 drives, and then we had another solid state drive where other elements were sort of sitting on there. But we limited the competition machines only to the games that they're playing and only certain process, right? So we had to go in and sort of rewrite certain things scripted from that perspective of getting in there and making sure that, because that's the other thing, that once again, authentic adoption and understanding broadcast and true broadcast. And how are you understanding broadcast from a competition side of now this whole virtualized world that exists, right? You have spectator modes and you have all of these elements that exist. So then the hardware is extremely important when you're designing out those elements. So like RTX 2070s, 2080s, from a graphics standpoint on the competition machine, and those were very, very important. And even the streaming side, we really beefed it up. Actually, streaming, we went a little bit more. We did a 2080 Ti, and then we did we did 32 gigs of RAM on the streaming machine, just because we're dealing with so many different inputs, so much content, and moving around. You just don't want to. You don't want to have a faux pas like I did earlier. So,
or in my case, I've got my streaming computer right back here. Probably should liquid cool it, because the CPU fan's going insane right now, because it's like managing a green screen and a broadcast and all that stuff. So tips for myself. But going past the actual computer hardware, Randy asked, what's the typical bill of material look like for an esports arena? Do they have crowd monitors? Me and Jason were talking about this while you're offline. What is the crowd side of it look like? What is the what kind of diagrams need to be drawn up, especially for something you did for Delaware University?
Yep. So this is really where knowledge and understanding of true broadcast comes in, right? Because what you're going to be introducing is potential latency. It's not so bad for the spectators, right? They can be behind a bit, but devices that you start entering into the machine and taxing the machine and injecting into the machine will introduce some level of latency. So if you're not sure. Like, don't try it, like, because you're going to have a very upset player because they know how fast something should be. But then from the spectator side of things, we're looking at, broadcast standards. So HD SDI at a very minimum. Most of our stuff today is 12G SDI. So all that stuff's at 4K. We can capture everything 4K. We'll in the University of Delaware, we had the big projector, a big laser projector for the spectators and sound system throughout, and all the lighting we had done. We'd also done some projection mapping on the acoustical panels as well. And we had, like, when the players come in, their faces show up, and when a play happens, that gets replayed on the wall in one of the hex patterns. So there's a lot of interactivity, but broadcast standards, understanding that latency is extremely important. Diagram, know all the ins and outs, and every element that you add into the line from start to finish, you're introducing a level of latency. So you've got to be very careful with that. We found out, actually, we started testing very early on, devices that potentially would work in the space, both on the computer and, virtualize, is there NDI streams? Do you do that? What does that look like from taxing on resources? I wouldn't do that, just so unless you have a really great design network. Now, that's a whole nother talk and conversation. Yeah. But from a broadcast standpoint, we use all broadcast standards, all SMPTE standards. We hold to that very, very close. And on top of that, that also gives the opportunity, once again, to the student to understand the standards the industry are utilizing, right, from a broadcast. So it's very familiar to them. Oh, I did this in my esports arena, and I understand all of this, and I understand, all the lower thirds, and I understand, what MEs are, mix and effects layers, and DVEs, and all of those things are now being introduced for then the spectators, right? So some of the things at Ottawa University, this is, well, at University of Delaware as well, but at Ottawa University, we're able to show in the stream, League of Legends, I can show all 5 players simultaneously, their point of view cameras, and then I can show all their 5 games simultaneously, so you can actually see them. Or I can do the spectator mode and then 2 little cameras where, someone's heading off face to face, and they're looking at it, virtually in League of Legends. They're on the field, they're mid lane, top lane, or bottom lane, or in the jungle, and they're fighting off, and there's the action, and then we bring up the 2 cameras of those 2 players. So that is giving real world experience to these students as well when we're talking about spectators and content. And that's really important, because something like League of Legends, that's a slow start game, right? That starts off very slow. It's like
very,
watching
very slow, yeah.
But the last 5 to 7 minutes are absolutely exciting. And so that's the other thing you have to start teaching, is how do you build up an audience when it's like watching paint dry?
Storytelling.
It's storytelling. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So,
and these solutions, like you said, they're very complicated, multifaceted. When it comes to, you go in there, you went to the University of Delaware, you're the reseller, and you've put the whole solution together, you've installed it, blah, blah, blah. You leave. Who manages that when you're gone? Is it the students that are part of the program? Is it part of the IT staff of the university itself? Is it a combination of the two? Who is it, them working with the reseller to kind of make sure that everything stays up to date? What is after purchase management look like?
Sure. So it really depends, right? So we offer maintenance contracts, and we do push those, because there's always a level of understanding of technical understanding of the system, right? There's going to be a cap that most IT and AV individuals on the university campus can sort of understand. And there are some very intelligent people on campuses that understand AV very, very well. But yeah, so we do see student workers. We normally, So University of Delaware is a good example, right? So it's run under student life. That's where the student government, that's where it sits at UDel. And then they have a whole team that we've gone through training. We've showed them how to use all the equipment. We showed them what the ins and outs are. And so that's very important as well, as training, that they become very comfortable with the system. And really, it's no different than any other AV system that you sort of introduce to any client from that perspective. But we are seeing IT will obviously take the IT side of things. Depends on how involved they even want to be. Some IT teams are like, yeah, let's do this, esports. Let's bring this together. Some are like, I'll help you when you need help. But we are seeing a lot of individuals within student life or on-campus students that are managing these spaces themselves.
That's important to keep in mind, especially for our resellers, in terms of who to communicate with after the fact, and making sure that everything is still running, and when it's time to do any upgrades, that they're brought in to consult with the right people. They don't want to be consulting with the IT staff. If the students are managing on a daily basis, then they know the ins and outs and what's wrong with the systems or where things might be lacking now. Because like you said, there are certain games like League of Legends that could run on a toaster, but you have every year a new game is released that pushes the graphical boundaries of what you need. So making sure that those systems are up to spec is also very important after the fact.
What I normally tell people is know your game, right? Know the game that you're going to be playing and integrating, and not just listen. Everyone can go on to the manufacturer's website and see the recommended specs. I mean, that's easy, but you have to accommodate for all the other elements of play, of competition, especially at the competition level when we're talking about that. You've got to be able to know the game and the function of the game, because that is extremely important when designing a system. Extremely important. And
it's important to know, we're speaking very generically about the game or what game you're working at, because we're getting a lot of direct questions from our resellers, like, are people playing Fortnite? Are people playing Overwatch? Are people play what direct games? Really, in reality, the games, I don't want to say the games don't matter, but the games aren't the star of the show. It's the athletes.
Yeah. So, and that's part of the exploratory process, right? You pose the question. You need to pose the question.
Yeah. What games are you looking at playing?
And that question right there sort of then separates, the curds from the whey at that point. We're seeing, okay, this is your understanding. Technically, that's not esports, and most people fall into that camp. And there are then, there are the ones that actually truly understand it, because they can answer that question really quick, and they can just say, oh yeah, well, we're in this league, we're playing this game, these are the teams, this is how often we play, and we're already streaming to some capacity, and we just need a path then to an upgrade. But the ones that are like, we want to bring on esports, if you pose the question, well, what games are you playing? Now you need to walk them through. At high school, it's a little different, right? Because there's like a tolerance level, like first-person shooters and all that kind of stuff. At the collegiate level, it kind of starts to change a little bit. There's a lot of high schools that are playing, Rainbow Six and Overwatch and some of these other first-persons. But you need that is, I think, one of the most fundamental questions you need to post to your client. Well, what games are you playing? And when they start questioning, well, we really don't know, then it's like, okay, how about we actually sit down and explore this, shall we? And let's really open up the idea. Here's the other thing that I tell people. Walk before you run. Don't get into 20 games. It's called esports. It's not singular. That's plural for a reason. But that doesn't mean you need to jump into every team. University of Delaware was fortunate enough to actually line up their club and kind of pull their club, which already had segmented elements, to actually have a League of Legends team, a Hearthstone team, an Overwatch team, and a Rocket League team, right? So they already had those. They already had team captains. They already had that in place. And so that's really important to understand as well, that when you're walking a client through this, make sure you're walking before you run concept. Don't say, well, we want to play all these games. Well, that's actually going to maybe deter people, because what may happen is you may not have all the systems in place to play all those games, or the staff, or the know-how, or the coach, or whomever, to actually successfully carry that game on. Like, take your time. It's okay. It's new. This is new. Yeah. This isn't like, this has been around for 60, 70 years, and there's a lot of things that you're going to learn. The client's going to learn a lot through that process.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions about Ronnie's asking again, how do you license games for esports? Well, it's again knowing your game, because many of them are free. Yep. League of Legends is a free to play game.
Sure.
And the games that are paid are actually very similar to how you would buy it. Like, okay, I've got 12 computers, I needed 12 copies of this game. It's
that's right.
Licensed at a per device level.
Yeah, so that's sort of a two-sided question, because there's licensing for like the gameplay at the competition side of things,
and then there's the social media.
Well, there's that. Yeah, there is the social media element. But like, if you bring on, like you, Dell, you had 30 some machines, and then you have competition machines. So does that mean I need 50 license of Overwatch? Well, the answer is technically no, you don't. There's a way to manage that. There's software out there that helps with managing all of that, and that gets into a bigger, once again, I think a bigger conversation. But there are licensing directions and things in place that you can actually offer. That's what we do. We offer these solutions that say, okay, how many do you get? And then like we do something like, well, you buy 10, you don't have to buy all 50, you buy 10, and then when 10 are used up, then the 11th person unfortunately has to wait for that license to free up, that license key, and we can rotate those licenses around and manage those. So there's a lot of that. And UDEL is a perfect example of that.
Right. And for our resellers purposes, if you're interested, or you want to learn more about the licensing side, or you're working on a deal and you need to learn more about the licensing side, reach out to us, esports@dnh.com, with your questions, and we can get you in contact with resources to help you, walk you through that process. There was another question in here, and I don't want to backslide too far into this, but now that we've talked all this at the collegiate level, we want to work reverse. Let's talk about the K-12 level. Is this are we kind of just taking what we were learning about at the collegiate level and minimizing it and doing it at a smaller scale for the K-12 level? Is that kind of the same similar approach, or is it a little different?
Yes and no. I mean, yeah, sure. So if you look at K-12 and you look at the education system and the way it's set up, like even at the sports and the athletic side, right? You're learning skills the older you get, right? And then you're enhancing those and refining those skills. And then let's pick on football, right? So football at the sports side, we'll pick athletics first, and I'll talk about academics second. So when you're growing up, peewee football, and then you go middle school, and then you get into high school, all through that process, you are refining those skill sets. You're understanding teamwork. You're understanding working together. There's all of these things, and then you get into the high school level. Your senior year, you've got it's your last year. It's last championship. Who knows? Whatever the situation may be, right? And you're refining those skills, and then those skills become desirable for colleges then to look at, and then they sort of come out, come looking for you and recruit, and then you're taking those skills up to the next level. Then eventually from the collegiate football, you're refining them so much that you're working at a higher level, that then you are then going to be approached by the pros. And hopefully, that is the athletic path. And so esports is really no different, right? You're seeing skill sets at middle school level, because I have a middle school kid. You're looking at critical thinking. You're looking at motor skills and developing all that cognitive thought that happens and strategizing and figuring things out, right? That's the middle school level. Then at the high school level, you're getting to those next levels of strategizing with your team, figuring out, more on the skill sets for whatever game you're playing, and you're working together in that aspect. And then at the collegiate level, now you've taken all those skill sets, and now you're applying it, and you're going full-fledged into competition, right? That's what you're doing. And then eventually, hopefully, pros if you want to. So that, it is sort of that step, and I think it still needs to be that necessary step. I don't think there's things sticking around. And even at an academic side, right, I give this example of my son and I, 2 summers ago, we built an arcade console, everything from the ground up, right? So I brought home CAD drawings to scale, all the supplies. And for a whole summer, I showed him how to read scale, how to convert scale off of CAD, how to use all the wood tools, the wood gluing, screwing, and nailing and staining. We had to create our own arcade buttons and a breadboard. So I had to show him how to solder, how to tin wires. I had to show him, what resistors and capacitors were. We had a Raspberry Pi running the whole thing. So from a computer, very basic computer understanding, and then even if-else statements and coding elements, right? Mm-hmm. Now, these are all building blocks. Now, one of those things may take, and then as from an academic standpoint, you need to walk that through the same way. So now, our curriculum then, when we look at high school, we look at it from an academic side of, okay, what path now do you want to go into? Middle school, you've sort of explored, maybe your freshman year, you've explored the academic path. Now, what direction do you want to go to? Build those skills, because when you get to the collegiate level and you go into higher education, you're going to not only have this this culture that you're adopting from esports, but you are also looking at a career path. And so you need to merge these two together. And so those advanced studies, those things that we're working on with colleges, universities, when we help them develop a curriculum like a major or a minor and that whole path, we're looking at now taking the foundation that we've developed at K-12 and then now using it in the application element of higher education. So I think it's very necessary to have that path both at the academic side and the athletic side.
Yeah, it's something that kind of they do come together at some point. We are coming to the close to the top of the hour. So if you guys have any more questions, please feel free to ask them now. We'll answer as many as we can in the next couple of minutes. Also did want to mention, we've been giving him so much airtime today. Let's give him a little bit more. We did sit down with Bubba and Connor, who you spoke about earlier in the broadcast, speaking more directly about K-12 esports a little bit last year. That is still available if you hadn't seen it and you want to take a look at it. It's available at dnh.com/esports. So if you're looking to learn a little bit more about K-12 esports, definitely go give that a look. One of the questions that I saw that I wanted to ask real quick is how important is it, whether it's for the university or the technology provider, to have vendor partners when coming into an esports solution? What role does vendor partnership play?
Well, a lot, because we've actually partnered with a lot of different vendors. I can't name them all because we've done so much work with them, but that's very strategic to understand, the vendor side, the manufacturer side, because as a partner, you need to vet through, how much invested are they into the esports industry themselves, right? Are they in it for the bandwagon standpoint and just saying we have something for esports, or they truly understand esports? Because they're there for support. They're there to help you walk through that. And the resources. So because they've probably been down the road before and they have a deeper understanding. Doing it alone, I say don't do it. There's no need to do it alone and try and figure out, right? There's a lot of things that have been established already. So, those vendors are extremely important in selecting and understanding, and they need to grasp esports. They need to understand it at the highest level of competition. That's extremely important.
And the great thing for our resellers working with DNH is we have already have partnerships with many of these vendors, Lenovo, Intel, Samsung's SSDs, NVIDIA, Xbox, Thermaltake, the Cooler Master, Seagate, Bad Cats, Razer, Logitech, the list goes on, WD, Vertec, if there's an esports vendor out there, we already have an existing partnership with them. And through extension, you also have that same partnership with them. So reaching out to our esports team to get more information on, hey, how can this vendor help me in our bids? We highly encourage it. Reach out, esports@dnh.com. We can kind of help you through that process. If you want to focus on one vendor, we can kind of be that conduit for you guys and get that road started. So it's certainly something to keep in mind. As we're coming to the top of the hour, any final thoughts here, Josh, as we leave here, for where are we going in collegiate esports? What does the outlook look like, and how much more impact are we going to see in this realm?
Sure. I mean, we are seeing an amazing amount of audience growth in esports, collegiate esports, K-12 esports. I mean, just generally the topic of esports, you are seeing such an amazing amount of growth. And, final thoughts, our passion at Esports Integration and Horizon AVL is to make sure that we're affording these students these opportunities for career paths, for something that for us is our goal and our mission. We want to make sure that every student has an opportunity in this space to make a connection, to find a community, to build on their culture, right? That's our drive. And that's extremely important. There is a generation that is rising up, during the pandemic, post the pandemic, pre the pandemic, right? It's a different culture, a different understanding. The pandemic sort of has accelerated actually esports, I think, more than anything.
Right. Yeah.
So
it turned out to be a little bit of gasoline on the fire.
yeah, slightly. But that audience growth and people really, it is becoming, and I know this is for some, this is really difficult. This is becoming a pastime, right? Where football, basketball, baseball, hockey, in the traditional sense, you're starting to see their numbers decline, and you're seeing viewerships in the millions. And so with that, giving these students, and I keep saying authentic, giving them that authentic understanding of the industry and supporting that with these builds is our highest priority, and it should be everyone's highest priority. I don't want to ever give a scenario where I'm putting in a system and not giving that student the opportunity to really find themselves right in that craft, in that career. And so that for us is by far the biggest thing that we want to sort of leave with from our perspective of esports in education.
Jason, you were my closer. You were my ace in the hole, but due to technical problems, you became my leadoff hitter. Anything to close out with? You've assisted on several esports opportunities here at DNH. Anything you want to close out with?
I just want to add to our resellership of that we do have not just the component side, but we have the facilities as it revolves around the AV requirements for it. So we do have the vendors for audio solutions like Harman and JBL, as well as the matrix and controls from Atlona, AMX. We have just so many different partners with it. The mount side of it for Chief, the displays, like Samsung, LG, NEC. So if there's any solutions or requests out there, I'm working on 2 of them right now in the K through 12 sector. So any other ones that you guys have, feel free to let us know, and we'll definitely work with you on them. All
right. Awesome. Well, Josh, Jason, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic conversation. For you guys here on DHTV, we have 3 broadcasts coming up in March, one on cloud, one on hybrid, one on education. Look out for information on that. And also, please keep your eye out for registration information for our April Threadcast. We got our next Threadcast coming up in April. We're going to have a wide variety of topics. Myself, Jason, will be back for that one as well. So please keep your eyes out for that. Thank you for all your responses and the poll questions and your actual questions today. I didn't even tell you guys where I was pushing out poll questions, and you guys were on top of that one. So thank you guys for that. But with that being said, Josh, Jason, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.